My name is Cristina, and this is my video out. I was born here on the border in Paso, Texas, in the later 80s, or mid 80s, I should say. So definitely millennial. And as a kid, I was a tomboy. Yeah, I was a big old tomboy, and I didn't grow out of it. Yeah, big tomboy. I actually remember asking my mom when I stopped wearing dresses, and she said I had a lot of boy cousins, and I would play with them, soccer, basketball, you name it. And she just said one day, "Mommy, I don't want to wear dresses anymore. I'm not comfortable in them when I play." And so she's like, "Okay." And she does, and from there, she's like, "I hardly bought you dresses. If you had something nice to like a nice function, you would like, it was mainly pants, like a pantsuit." And I was just jeans and a t-shirt, or jean shorts and a t-shirt. And yeah, I mean, I think I was when I was a kid, or when I was like 2-3 years old, I actually had this really curly hair. I looked like, I kind of describe it like Screech from Saved by the Bell. It just curls all over. And then it grew out to be like, really long, and I had like a golden brown hair. It almost looked blonde when I was little. And then, it got darker, but yeah, I just had this like, and then but when I was growing up, it started growing long, and I had this big fro. Like, I always had like a big puff. It was hard to put a comb through it. I always remember my dad would, when they would do braids, or like, or ponytails, and when I wasn't able to comb my hair, my dad had the most difficult time like putting a comb through my hair as well. So I just had this like puffy hair all the time. But yeah, I mean, other than to say, I was super involved in sports. I love to cook, and I still do love to cook. My mom actually taught me at a very young age to cook. And that is very much part of who I am, and very much part of who my family is. That's how we express our love. My grandfather was a chef as his career. My mom loves to cook, and we share recipes, and that's been since I was probably 3 or 4 years old. She threw me in the kitchen. She has this one picture of me as a toddler, and I'm like, I think with a molcajete, like just, I don't know what the hell I was like, but she put me to work when I was like a toddler. So yeah, I mean, obviously like really tight knit with my family. I have an older brother, 6 years older than me. And yeah, I mean, that was me. I was fortunate to have a very awesome upbringing with some great parents. So I identify as being a lesbian. You kind of just know, right? It's like I think growing up, I know it was right for me it was right for me to like guys, but it just wasn't there, right? And so I mentioned Saved by the Bell. Actually, my first crush was Kelly Kapowski, Tiffany Amber Thiessen. That was like my crush, and I watched her all the time. I thought she was gorgeous. Oh, and actually, when I was like in like kinder or first, I remember like specifically like asking a girl out, and we had no idea what gay was or anything like that, and she was like, okay, right? And like we like would dance on like the playground or some like, things like that, and to me, like, that was just like natural, right? Until I got older and I knew better, I should say. And so I started to suppress those emotions. And I think in middle school is when I was probably going through the most tough time, trying to figure out and negotiate through the feelings I had in being attracted to girls. And I will say it probably wasn't until I was in high school that I came out. I was probably about 15 years old. And I started coming to terms with it a little bit more myself. And the reason why I came to terms is I remember I was a freshman and I played basketball, and there was a friend of mine who was a year older, and she was out as being bisexual. And I thought, oh, like, and all her other friends were like out of nothing, right? It was easy. So I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. So I kind of slowly started coming out to different people as being bisexual. And so I have like some coming out stories that I thought were pretty funny. And I think around 16 years old, and I was just like, who am I kidding? I'm not bisexual. I'm fucking gay. So like one of the first people I came out to was my best friend Denise. And I've been friends with her since we were 12. And I always used to joke around with her, like played jokes on her, and we in high school and middle school. And I just told her in the morning, I was like, hey, I have something to tell you, and just want to get it off my chest. Let's talk at lunch. And so we met at lunch, and we were alone together, and I told her, hey, I think I'm gay. We're walking down the hall, we're together, and we're kind of conversing back, and I was just like, I just didn't know how to break it to her. And she's like, come on, Cristina, you could tell me anything. And I was like, oh, that's just what. She's like, are you pregnant? And I was like, oh, no, not for a bit. And then she's just like, you better not tell me you're a fucking lesbian. And I stopped in my tracks, and I was just like, well, and she's like, oh, Cristina. She's like, how long have you known? And she hugs me, and she's like, I love you. Like it says nothing's gonna change. She's just like, but this has to be a joke. This is one of your practical jokes. At the end of the day, at track practice, you're gonna tell me that this is a joke. And so we're at track practice a few hours later, and she's like, so? And I'm like, still like women. And she's like, okay. And she is like a sister to me. Right, it's been 20 years. Oh, since I came out, it's been like about 16 years since I've come out to her, and we've been friends for 20 years, and she is my sister, and has always been there for me. The first family member I came out to was my big brother, who was 6 years older than me. Big guy, like 6'1", like muscular, big dude, football guy, right? Like he's a man's man, right? Like that's my brother. And we're driving to the store, and I was just like, at this point I just had to tell someone that was really, really close to me, and I was like, hey man, I have something to tell you. And I just at this point I was just like, I'm gay. And he's just like, oh shit, mom and dad are gonna freak out. No, mom and dad are gonna freak because you're not gonna tell mom and dad. And he's just like, all right, man. Hell yeah, man. Now we can check out chicks together. So, needless to say, there is no issues there. But I think, my parents were another story, and I did come out early to my parents. I think it was all in the same year. And when I came out to my brother, at the same time, he was. He just found out that he was about to be a dad, and he hadn't told my parents yet. I was the only one that knew. And he said, hey, it'd be cool is the day that I come out, or let me say the day that I tell mom and dad I'm going to be a dad is the day that you tell mom and dad that you're gay. And I started laughing. I was like, oh, you would love that, wouldn't you? And it happened that way. And it wasn't on purpose. I used to be very involved in the church, and I was going through kind of this spiritual awakening, and I'm no longer involved in the church, but it was actually a very interesting time for me, right? I was going through this kind of new spiritual thing. I'm Catholic, and surprisingly, the people of that church were very welcoming and whatnot. And so anyway, I was about to go on a retreat, and it was the night before I'm going on this retreat, and they asked me to give a speech at the retreat. And I had originally written this essay about wearing different masks as a teenager in high school, right? One day I was bisexual to someone, one day I was a lesbian, one day I was just Cristina, right? And the other day I was a straight daughter. And so I had, something already written, and I was kind of preparing my remarks for this speech the next day. And my brother comes to me and he says, hey, come to the living room. I'm going to tell mom and dad something. And so I knew what this was going to be. So he says on the news, I'm going to be a dad. And and like my my parents were like a little surprised with my dad. I think it was so funny. My dad, I thought, was going to be a little bit angry because it wasn't planned. And but he, right away he's like, really? He was super excited. And then, well, you're going to have to be a man and take care of your family. And so anyway, all that went down. Everything was great. They're going to be grandparents. And I went back to my room, and something just looked at me and said, tell him now. It had been I think it's exhausting, right? Coming out is exhausting. Keeping that in is, I don't know what's more exhausting. So it's less like, it's like I'm damned if I do it or I'm damned if I don't, right? I just had to do it. And I had a good relationship. I have a good relationship with my family, so why not? And so I went to the living room and I pulled out my remarks and I just read it to them. And, I think my mother's look was not what I expected it to be. And she didn't do anything, right? She just stayed quiet. My dad was just the kind of the person who kind of like pulled us all together. But, when I immediately read that, I started to read that, I started to bawl. And my brother knew exactly what I was going to do. And he just held me and he said, you've gone this far. Just do it now. Just do it. And so I read my remarks, like I said, and my mom just didn't have a reaction. And my dad pulled us together. He's like, these are two big pieces of information you all just told us today, but we're a family, we're going to stick together. And so, I went on a retreat, and my mom left me a nice note and said, this is, something that, we're going to have to sit with, and we'll be there. We love you. We support you. But my parents and we didn't talk about it for the next 2 years. Like, it was just like a cone of silence. Like, nothing happened. Until one day my parents, I'm having breakfast with my mom, and I was 18 years old. I'd already graduated from high school, and I was dating a girl. And my mom, she asked me what I did the night before, and I said, I hung out with so-and-so. And she said, okay. She's like, you've been hanging out a lot with her. Are you all right? And I said, yes, Mom, we are. And she's like, okay. She's just like, this, I need to accept and support that this is not a phase anymore, right? And I said, yes, Mom, it's not a phase. I'm gay. And she's like, okay. And, and that was that. We never touched it at all anymore. And I want to say, that was like 16 years ago. I'm in my 30s now. When I was 20, I started working at a gay bar here in El Paso for 5 years, and they would come to visit me. I'm married now to a beautiful woman. My parents hosted our wedding ceremony. Both our families were involved, and we are so privileged and lucky to have a loving, supportive family who just nothing skipped a beat. Everything went on. And it's funny because my mom, one time she calls me up, so for a while, she was just calling me up, every time something gay was on TV. Mija, did you hear about this movie? It's coming out. I think you should watch it. So, one day she calls me up and she's like, Mija, I was listening to a talk show, and I don't understand. Why do parents have to accept their child as being whatever? Why? She's just like, I don't accept you. I support you. I love you. You are Cristina, right? You are not Cristina, my lesbian daughter. You are Cristina, my daughter. And I love that. Without any education with that, she just no, I support and I love you, right? And I think when we talk about this idea of acceptance or tolerance, I hate the word tolerance, right? You tolerate, I remember hearing this from an activist here in El Paso. You tolerate a bug that's in your ear, right? You don't tolerate people, right? We support them, we celebrate them, we love people. And anyway, those are my grand coming out. I think this was another thing though. All right, so this was another thing. And what I mean by this is that I obviously didn't have short hair my whole life. I was 20 years old when I decided to cut it off. And I wasn't living with my parents anymore. but I was still living here in El Paso. And, you know, I had already started like dressing from clothes in the men's department, and I was already starting to become in my own, right, in my own skin. And so I decided I'm just gonna do it, and it was like increments, right? I think when I graduated from high school, I was like down to here, but it was like a ponytail butch, and and then I cut it shorter, and I had like kind of this cool looking fro for a while, and then I was like, man, fuck it, I'm just gonna cut it all off. And so I did, and it took me about a week to like go home to my parents, and so normally I would just drop in, and so like, she had called me, hey, where are you? And so I was like, let me just drop in. So I dropped in, and I was like surprised, and my mom opens the door, and she goes, huh, you cut your hair. Oh, mija, you cut your hair. Oh, you know what looks cute? And then I see my dad walk down the hall. I don't like it. And so we had a conversation about it, and my dad says, you know, like, don't think anything about this. I just don't like short hair on women. And I was like, all right, Dad, I guess that's respectful, okay. And then my mom says this, ay, mija, it's because a couple of years ago you started dressing in men's clothes and you look cute. You look cute. But I have to ask, do you want to be a man? And I was just like, oh, that was totally off guard. I was like, no, of course I don't want to be a man. You know, I still love what little femininity I have left of me, you know, like I paint my toenails, I put makeup on. I love being a woman, right? But, you know, I think, I told my mom, like, no, that's not it at all. I'm a different type of woman, Mom, right? that was it. And, you know, I just think it was kind of funny, her reaction, because right away I think she wanted to go to one or the other, and we, you know, as a society we can't think of gender roles not being one or another, and but, you know, now like she buys me ties and is, you know, like says I look handsome when I'm in a tie, and, you know, things like that. So you know, I think like the process of coming out with my parents has been very interesting, and I will say this, to see their development is the biggest thing, and something that I am so fortunate of is that I didn't have to do the coming out to the rest of my family. They did it for me. And the same with my wife as well. Her mother did the coming out for us, for her. And that was so nice, not having to tell someone over and over again. Because you don't tell people that you're straight, right? But for whatever reason, we have to tell people and that we're, you know, LGBT or T. And it shouldn't be that way. It should just be. Our trans community. This administration is ridiculous and horrible. Horrible, right? If it isn't hard enough to be a trans person just within itself, you know, trying to navigate that through like your own identity, right? If it isn't hard enough to be Black in America, layering all that in together, being trans and Black, being trans and Latinx, right? It is, I think that is the most pressing thing, right? And it seems like there is a constant jab at the trans community. And, you know, I think the LGB part of the community is really starting to see that, and we should have looked at this a long time ago, right? And knowing that we need to be fighting for the whole spectrum of rights instead of just kind of pigeonholing everything, right? Because, and you know, trans community, and a lot of folks have been saying this for a long time, but just the attacks going at the trans community. You know, I also read your website in 2016, 2017, the most violent years for LGBTQ people in the United States. It's alarming, right? There is no reason that in 2019 that we should have it. There's no reason that we should be able, I mean, excuse me, I'm messing this up, but there's no reason in 2019 that we shouldn't have full equality across the board, right? How is it that I can still be fired for being gay here in the state of Texas? That's alarming. That's so fucked up in so many different ways, right? And you know, to top that off, it's just all these just layering issues, right? Our community already has issues in remaining economically stable because people can still discriminate against us. But imagine like having to live in this world where an administration has validated every single racist or homophobe in this country, that to say that it's okay. His hateful rhetoric has validated that. And so it's therefore made our streets even more unsafe. So, you know, I think what our community is now doing is coming together even more than they have before to fight this administration. You know, we had a lot of gains in the Obama administration, but there was still a long way to go. But now we're taking a step back. And what worries me is if in the next administration, if it is better, how much all the steps we'll have to regain because all the steps we went back as well. And I hope, you know, I just hope in this new wave of politicians who are seemingly better for the LGBTQ community, that we can once and for all see full equity on the table for us. Because I strongly believe that it isn't until you start changing laws is when you start seeing a bit of a shift in sentiments, in everyday sentiments towards people, and realizing, oh, that is not okay. It is not okay that we have a record number of trans women or men being killed every single year. That's not okay. My favorite part about being me? Ooh, that's a good question. You know, someone asked me one time a while back if I could relive it all again, and, you know, could choose, right? Like, would I be gay again? And, yeah, right? Like, you know, part of like it, I love that, right? Like, it's part of it is fun because we're in such a vibrant, beautiful community, right? And I've learned so much, right? I think being gay and being queer and butch, right, is just very much part of who I am and the resilience and how strong I am as a woman, right? It's oftentimes not easy to present myself in the professional world in a suit and tie. That, you know, it's difficult, right? I'm second guessed a lot as a woman. I'm misgendered a lot as well. But at the same time, I know that that's what makes who I am. You know, with all the queerness that's here, that's what makes who I am. And to top that off, I love being Chicana. I love being Puerto Rican, right? Like, that is so much ingrained in me. It makes my life, it makes our community just so much more rich and fun, right? Every time I'm like with my Puerto Rican gente, I'm like, fuck yeah, man, this is fun to be around and listening to salsa and eating the badass Puerto Rican food, or listening to, if you're, you know, probably you've been here in El Paso, like listening to the mariachi or ranchero music, and eating some bomb-ass Mexican food and being around your gente who is so compassionate and is so nice. You know, I couldn't trade that for anything else in the world. And so, you know, I think those like intersections of being Chicana, being Puerto Rican, and being a butch lesbian woman has made who I am, right? And also living here on this beautiful border as well. And I think that's it, right? I'm you know, every time I'm like eating Puerto Rican food, I tell my dad, thanks for being Puerto Rican. Thank you. Because like it's so much fun to have like this such rich culture and be part of that culture and be able to live in it every single day.